I don't know if you ever heard about the island of the dolls.
All I've heard about is that it's literally just an island by itself with a bunch of dolls.
But have you heard about the legend behind it?
I've never heard about that.
In the 1950s, there was a man. His name was Julian Santana Barrera. He was a guy who loved peace and quiet. He didn't like being around people like that, so that's why he decided to live there. And then one day, his peace was interrupted by a girl that he heard in the canal drowning. In the panic, he tries to save the girl, but then when he tries to save the girl, he realizes that it's already too late. The girl is already dead. A little bit after, a doll appears in the same exact spot that the girl had drowned in. As respect, he ends up hanging up the doll on a tree. But after that whole thing, that same night, he started hearing voices and screams of a little girl basically being tormented by these evil spirits that he said. So what he decided to do was collect dolls no matter where he got them from. If it was a garbage, no matter how they looked, and he would hang them on trees. He put them around his little hut. He believed that by doing this, it would please the girl's spirit and also keep away evil spirits. And every single doll represents an evil spirit. For the next 50 years, he collected dolls, and I'm not talking about a couple hundred dolls, bro. I'm talking about thousands of dolls. But around, I would say 2001, he ends up getting a heart attack. But where his body was found was the exact same spot that the girl died in.
Have people seen shit?
I'm gonna show you a clip because Ghost Adventures actually visited the island, and
the 24-year-old man in that video, named Efekan Kultur, died from obesity-related issues after blowing up on social media for posting mukbang content. So Efekan, who was from Turkey, blew up here on TikTok and posted tons of content involving mukbangs. If you don't know what mukbangs are, they're essentially videos where hosts eat a large amount of food while interacting with the audience or sharing stories. And Efekan posted a lot of videos of him doing these sorts of things. Sadly though, shortly after he became famous, his health began to decline. Earlier this year, Efekan was admitted to the hospital for obesity-related issues, and before he passed, it was reported that Efekan couldn't even move himself, and that his health had gotten so bad that he couldn't even go to visit his own mother's grave, who passed away in the year 2024. And then on March 7th, 2025, Efekan passed away. At that point, he had been in the hospital for 3 months already, and I couldn't find an actual exact cause of death, but everybody who's reported on this just said that it was obesity-related issues. In the wake of Efekan's death, the Turkish government has claimed that they want to ban social media usage for children under the age of 16, claiming that it's dangerous for kids to be exposed to content like this. This is obviously a horrible way to go, so to Efekan's entire family, my condolences.
This young man got ran over by a train and lost both of his legs. In 2017, Jacob Ohl lost both of his legs below the knee when he was run over by a train in Liburn. Jacob was walking along the train tracks with earbuds on March 2nd when he sensed but didn't hear a train approaching behind him. Jacob's lawsuit also claims that the CSX train did not have properly functioning front-facing cameras, preventing the train's engineer and conductor from seeing Jacob in time to avoid hitting him. The CSX company also did not put up fencing or any other warning devices to keep pedestrians at a safe distance from the tracks. Jacob was also at least 1,000 feet away from the train when the conductor first saw him, but they did not ring the train's bell, blow the train's horn, or apply the emergency brake before hitting Jacob. It also took a half a mile for the train to completely stop after hitting Jacob. Now, what I'm about to show you is the 911 call Jacob made right after getting hit by the train. And keep in mind, he just lost both of his legs. They were literally amputated from his body from the train. And just listen to how calm he's talking. It's like he didn't even get hit by a train.
911, what's the location of your emergency?
I just got hit by a train.
Okay, where are you?
I'm off the path of the park in downtown Melbourne.
Okay, were you walking or were you driving?
No, I was walking.
Okay, but you're okay? Like you sound like you're...
No.
Okay, are you still on the tracks?
No.
Is there anybody around you that you can
I don't see...
flag down?
No.
Okay, hold on a second. I'm going to try and figure out where you are, okay?
Okay.
And you're off the tracks, correct?
Yes.
Okay. How old are you, sir?
17.
And what part of your body was hurt?
My legs.
Okay, are they broken?
I think it cut them off.
They cut them off?
When she arrived to watch her attacker get executed on death row, she snuck in a secret message for him, and what it said stunned everyone. It was 2002 in a convenience store in Texas. Nikki Daniels was 19 years old, and this was her first job. She'd actually only been working in the shop 3 days. She was still kind of getting to grips with how to do everything, and luckily one of her friends also worked there, Candice Driver. Candice was really showing her the ropes and trying to train her up. There was also a man there called Kenneth Vanderveer, and he was a regular at the store. He would regularly come in and help the girls with things like general jobs, sweeping up, taking the bins out, etc. He'd actually been in a car accident when he was just 19, and it injured him so badly that he'd had to completely start from scratch, learning to do things like walking and talking again. He was just a lovely guy, and he was really keen to help with the local community and make friends. The three of them in the store together that night had no idea of the tragedy about to unfold. 2 men were planning to rob the place. These men were Richard Cobb and Bianca Adams, aged 19 and 20 at the time. Now, these men had no idea that Kenneth was due to be there. I think they just presumed that it was going to be these 2 girls and they were going to be very easy to overpower and scare. But when they showed up, approached the girls, and started robbing money out of the till, Kenneth came out of nowhere. He bravely confronted these 2 men, and then all hell broke loose. Their robbery had been derailed. They weren't counting on having to overpower 3 people. The men grabbed all 3 of them and forced them into their vehicle before driving them to a secluded field. Once there, they grabbed Nikki out of the vehicle and AR'd her at G point. They then took their hostages and in front of the girls shot Kenneth dead. And he didn't die quickly. He literally screamed out, "Oh my God, you shot me." They then shot multiple times and hit both of the girls, who were thrown backwards onto the ground. They actually then played dead on the floor. They were extremely badly injured, but they were hanging on to life. Men then examined Nikki while she lay there. They even kicked her repeatedly over and over again and held a burning lighter in front of her face just to check she was definitely dead. She wasn't, but they thought that she was, and so they left. Now, thankfully, after the men fled, the girls scrambled to their feet and ran to a nearby home to try and get some help. With 2 surviving witnesses, quickly these men were detained. They both admitted to their crimes and were both given the death penalty. But it was Richard's execution that really grabbed the attention of the media. Bianca was executed in 2012 and Richard's was scheduled for the following year. Nikki, having since had to live through the trauma of what she experienced, as well as having a permanent reminder in a huge, and I mean huge, scar all across her back and shoulders, was invited to the execution. She knew that the inmate was given an opportunity to say some last words before being executed. She prepared a note. She was kind of preempting that he may ask for forgiveness during his execution. So she wrote on a piece of paper, "I forgive you." She was planning to lift it up to the glass for him to see. But when the execution came, it didn't really go as she'd thought. Richard's words were simply, "Life is too short. I hope anyone that has negative energy towards me will resolve that. Life is too short to harbour feelings of hatred and anger. That's it." She never lifted up her note.
These American missionaries serving in Haiti were just shot and killed and then set on fire by a local gang. And unfortunately, they were on the phone with their families who heard the entire thing. This is Davy Lloyd and his wife Natalie, who just so happens to be the daughter of Missouri State Representative Ben Baker. The couple worked for Missions in Haiti, which is a missionary organization created by Davy's parents. Davy grew up in Haiti and loved the community there. He left when he was 18 to attend a Bible college and met Natalie, and the two got married in the summer of 2022 before returning back to Haiti to serve the children there. But last Thursday at around 9 p.m., the couple as well as a group of children were leaving a youth group activity at the church when they were ambushed by 3 trucks full of men from a local gang. The gang tied Davy up in his house and beat him up. After they beat him up, they robbed the organization of literally everything they had, including their vehicles, and left. Some neighbors were able to get inside the house to untie Davy, who then called his mom. Davy was crying on the phone, scared for his life, and he told his mom that he and their compound were under attack. But just when things seemed like they were turning around, a second gang showed up and forced Davy, his wife, and the mission's local director, Jude Montes, into Davy's house and held them captive there for hours. During that time, the couple used a satellite internet link to make calls to their loved ones. They detailed every horrific thing that was happening to them, and all their loved ones could do was listen helplessly. This all took place in a community that is heavily controlled by gangs. Because of the heavy gang presence, police don't go in that area, so they were unable to get the missionaries out of the house. The head of the organization, which is Davy's parents tried negotiating with the gang on the phone to release them in exchange for money, but it was of no use. The gang then fatally shot all 3 people before setting the house on fire and leaving. And unfortunately, there's reportedly a video circulating online of the crime scene that shows their bodies inside the house. According to Natalie's dad, Representative Ben Baker, the missions in Haiti previously managed to make friends with some of the gang members, who thought they were there for the right reasons. Davy and Natalie's bodies have since been taken to the US Embassy, but at this point, no one knows how the investigation will proceed since the area is so controlled by gangs, and the fact that police won't go in that community because of it. They also don't know 100% at this point which gang is responsible for the murders. According to the missionary organization, the couple loved living in Haiti and doing humanitarian work that focused on the children there. Even as the violence worsened there over the last few months, they reportedly refused to leave the children behind who would have nowhere to go. They were also known to use their joint Instagram account called Adventures in Haiti to document their life and work there.
This magazine cover featuring a 12-year-old Brooke Shields is one of the most disturbing things I've ever seen. The headline reads, "Meet Terry and Brooke Shields. Brooke is 12, she poses nude. Terry is her mother, she thinks it's swell." First of all, there are so many things that are problematic with this, including the fact that a nationally known, widely published magazine was talking about the production of CP and the victimization of children so blatantly. And the inside of the magazine is not any better. It features photographs of Brooke like this. And if you don't know, Brooke Shields was getting famous at this time back in the 1970s, and she was being cast in a lot of films where the casting producers and directors required her to go nude, sometimes when she was as young as 11 years old. Keep that in mind, a whole group of adults and film producers making an 11-year-old child who was starring as a young prostitute go fully nude on camera for audiences to watch across the world. And the article itself is pretty damning. It basically discusses how Brooke's mother, Terry, wasn't really looking out in her best interests. The person who wrote the article tried to interview Terry, but she wouldn't consent to an interview. And heartbreakingly, at one point, Brooke is quoted as saying, "Sure, I knew what was going on with the sex scenes. I often pretend I don't know. It works better for me." I mean, I'd encourage you guys to read this whole article if you can find it, because it really demonstrates how horribly Brooke was treated by the Hollywood ecosystem. And the people who produced this should be in prison. I mean, I myself have no tolerance for pedophiles and any sort of pedophile behavior. And it's unbelievable to me that Brooke Shields was treated in this way, where she was victimized in front of the entire world, and nobody has ever been held accountable for what they did to her. I know that it was legal back then in some ways to produce images and videos like that. We obviously have much stricter laws nowadays, but it's still absolutely unbelievable to me that this sort of behavior was allowed to fly. And that not only did nobody really question it, but they were putting sentences like this on the covers of magazines. I mean, I have no words.
There was this Brazilian television broadcast that filmed and showed its entirety to the whole Brazilian country. I would describe this show kind of equivalent to Primeiro Impacto, where they cover shocking, disturbing stories, but this show just takes it to the max.
É terrível. Daqui a pouco aqui agora vai mostrar as imagens chocantes de uma jovem pulando para a morte.
So this is them.
Yeah, that's them.
Vamos ver o que estava acontecendo. Sentado no parapeito. E eu tomei um susto.
O pianista Daniele Lopes, de 16 anos, ameaçava se jogar do alto de um prédio comercial. Antes que os bombeiros iniciassem a estratégia de resgate, a menina pulou diante da...
Bro, they saw that shit live, bro.
The original 10-minute segment is lost completely. She ended up being a 16-year-old girl, and it was promoted in trailers. You guys have to stick around to this episode. It's gonna be the most shocking segment that we filmed yet. They literally run to the girl, and she's not even like fully dead. They describe it as near lifeless body. After this whole incident, the police arrived, and then they pack up their equipment, and then somehow they end up getting the address to their parents. Obviously, they're devastated, they're crying. They bring them to the police station, and again, they're filming this because, oh, it'll add more drama, it'll add a little more oomph to the segment, right? Now, after they filmed everything that they needed to film, now they needed a reason on why, because nobody knew why she committed. They end up saying that the reason why she jumped off and was because she had abusive parents. In reality, that was a whole lie. And
if you ever wonder why women choose the bear, it's because of stories like this. This is Amber Gibson. She was 16 years old when she was sexually assaulted and murdered by her own brother Connor. They both lived in foster homes since the ages of 3 and 5, but at the time of her murder, Amber was still living in a children's home while Connor was living at a hostel. Her horrible story begins in June of 2021 when she was sexually assaulted while asleep by 20-year-old Jamie Stars. Jamie was a complete stranger to her, but while Amber was at a party, she woke up naked from the waist down in a bed with Jamie under the covers. Just 5 months later, Amber made plans to hang out with her brother Connor on November 26, 2021, and she was really excited to see him and hang out with him since they no longer lived together. She was so excited that she even posted a selfie with him online. The two were caught on security footage going to Cadzo Glen Park in Hamilton, but roughly 90 minutes later, Connor was seen leaving the park alone. While he was there, he forcibly took off all of Amber's clothes and sexually assaulted her. During the assault, he hit her over the head several times, causing severe blunt force trauma. He then strangled her to death and hid her body in bushes and branches, returning home like nothing happened. Connor was then caught on security footage carrying a plastic bin to a dumpster behind his hostel and throwing away the items inside. Those items turned out to be his shorts and shirt, which were covered in Amber's blood. Obviously, when Amber didn't return home that night, she was reported missing, but her body wouldn't be found for another 2 days. In that time, Connor called the children's home where she was staying and pretended that she was still alive, and he even posted a tribute for her on Facebook. When her body was found, her clothes were also found nearby, and Connor's DNA was found on her shorts. Because of this, Connor was quickly arrested, although he initially denied any involvement. But this story gets worse. Before Amber's body was found, 45-year-old Stephen Corrigan, who was a complete stranger to her and Connor, found her body in the park. But instead of calling the police like a normal person, he instead sexually assaulted Amber's dead body and then tried hiding it further in the bushes. So in a matter of months, Amber was assaulted by 3 different men and eventually murdered at the hands of her own brother, someone she trusted. Last summer, Connor was sentenced to life in prison for the assault and murder of his sister, but he'll be eligible for parole after 22 years. Jamie Stars, the man who sexually assaulted Amber just 5 months before her murder, was sentenced to 10.5 years. He was also convicted of sexually assaulting another teenage girl just 1 month before Amber. Although he's technically considered a high risk of assaulting again, his sentence was so low because, according to authorities, he showed cognitive and emotional immaturity. He was reportedly taken from his home at the age of 3 and by 9 already had addiction issues. So because of his chaotic lifestyle and his young age at the time of the crime, authorities believe he has a better chance at rehabilitation, thus the short sentence. As for Stephen Corrigan, the man who found Amber deceased and decided to sexually assault her body instead of calling the police, he was sentenced to just 9 years in prison. Amber lived a very short and very tragic life. Everyone in her life let Amber down, and it's exactly stories like this that prove why women would rather choose the bear.
This 13-year-old boy survived one of the most brutal Mexican cartel attacks ever. A Mexican-American Mormon family was traveling to their relative's wedding in 3 separate cars when they were suddenly ambushed by a fleet of cartel hitmen, but amidst the violence and chaos, one name emerged as a beacon of hope: Devin Langford, the 13-year-old boy who survived one of the cartel's most brutal attacks. On November 14, 2019, members of the LeBaron extended family were traveling to their hometown Lamora to attend a wedding, but this just wasn't a celebration. It gave an opportunity for the LeBaron family to reunite with their loved ones who lived across the border. However, they never made it to their destination. At 9:40 a.m. that day, the first vehicle carrying Ronita Miller LeBaron and her 8-year-old, 10-year-old, and 8-month-old twin children were attacked by a group of armed cartel members. Her car bursted into flames and nobody in the car survived. Then, around noon that same day, the second car, driven by Donna Ray Langford, was carrying 9 children, and another car with Christina Langford Johnson and her infant daughter was attacked as well. Christina sadly didn't make it, but luckily her baby daughter managed to survive. It was said before her death, Christina jumped out of the car with her hands up, indicating she wasn't a threat, while begging for her and her daughter's life, but the cartel didn't care. They killed her anyway. Donna Ray Langford and 2 of her children lost their lives, while her 13-year-old son, Devin Langford, managed to make it out alive with his other siblings. Devin tried his best to shield his siblings from the violence that was happening right before their eyes. But what was most heartbreaking was all the kids that made it out alive were injured during the ambush. These cartel members literally jumped out of nowhere and began firing their weapons at defenseless women and children. Devin was the only person who wasn't injured, and what he did next was absolutely heroic and traumatizing. Devin hid his siblings behind bushes and walked 14 miles back to the family home. It took him 6 hours to get back to the family ranch for help. The family then quickly contacted the authorities to search for their family members who were viciously attacked. Just imagine being a parent and seeing your child run home saying his mother was dead and his siblings were all injured. When the authorities located the attacked vehicle, the scene was absolutely devastating. The LeBaron family broke down at the horrific aftermath.
This is for the record. Nita and 4 of my grandchildren are burnt.
Ronita Miller LeBaron's car was burnt to a crisp. They could only imagine the inhumane things inflicted on their loved ones. The surviving children were located and quickly transported to a hospital in Arizona. The ones who were not injured were escorted back to their parents. This was such a devastating situation the Mexican army had to get involved. The only highlight of this whole situation was finding Christine Marie's 7-month-old baby in the car. Sadly, her mother lost her life, who she will never get to know. What was supposed to be a fun, joyous occasion turned into a tragedy. Instead of gathering to celebrate, they had to plan family members' funerals instead. Devin Langford was called a hero for his actions, but in reality, he was a scarred child. He had to witness brutality that took his mother's life. He had to witness his brother and mother's funeral at just 13. No child on this planet should ever have to witness this kind of violence and cruelty. Rest in peace to all the LeBaron family members who lost their lives. This is an absolutely tragic event.
Just 48 hours after her wedding, she was found murdered in a bathtub, still wearing her wedding dress. It was the 12th of May 2012 in Illinois. Estrella Carrera, age 26, and Arnaldo Jimenez, age 30, had just tied the knot. They already had an absolutely beautiful family together. Estrella and Arnaldo had a 2-year-old son together, and Estrella also had an 8-year-old from a previous marriage. They met at a nightclub years earlier and immediately became infatuated with each other. They felt the logical next step was to get married in a gorgeous ceremony to celebrate their love and make things legally binding. The bride looked absolutely stunning on CCTV as she was spotted leaving a bar the night of her wedding, but it would be the last time she was spotted alive. It was actually the next day that police were called, and they were called because Estrella was due to pick her children up from her dad's house and never showed up. Her sister was really concerned about this because Estrella was a great mum. She was never late for anything. She would always be where she said she was going to be, especially regarding things around her children. So where was she? Well, her family and friends tried all desperately to get hold of her via telephone and she just wasn't answering. Some of them even showed up to her house and banged on the door and they got no response. Something was clearly wrong, and worries only grew when people started hearing whispers about the fact that an argument had been spotted the night prior, because the relationship between these two was far from perfect. In fact, they'd been a bit on and off, and they'd kind of split up and got back together a couple of times. And when they'd announced their engagement, some people didn't even realise they were back together. The wedding itself had even been somewhat of a surprise to people. They'd just kind of had a text about like a celebration of some sort, and they'd showed up, and it was these two's wedding. It was all pretty last minute and pretty strange, to be honest. Like I said, they'd been to bars that night. They'd been partying, going from club to club. They'd been chauffeured around all different areas of Chicago and then kind of called it a night at about 4 a.m. Then there was a really shocking revelation from Arnaldo's sister. She reportedly got a call from him and she said he sounded like he'd been crying. He told her that the pair had got into an argument and he'd left her bleeding. He then just hung up the phone and wouldn't answer, and he was completely uncontactable. Police headed over to the pair's apartment. They knew that they actually needed to probably just break the door down and see what was going on inside. And when they arrived at the apartment in Burbank, nobody could have prepared them for what they were about to find. In the bathtub was the bloodied body of this new bride. She was still in her beautiful sequined wedding dress. She'd clearly been the victim of an absolutely brutal attack. She had 18 stab wounds. Interestingly though, what the detectives were able to see from the crime scene was there was no blood spatter on the walls. It kind of seemed like she'd been killed elsewhere and then transferred to the pair's apartment. And there was no sign of any kind of break-in, any kind of forced entry. So that led the police, along with obviously the suspicious things that he'd been saying, to presume that Arnaldo might be responsible. Then Estrella's friends told officers something. Estrella had confided in them and said that she was only getting married to him because he'd threatened her. They said that he had told her he'd take her kids away if she didn't. This was kind of painting a picture that this really hadn't been a picture-perfect happy relationship like some people thought. There had also been a history of violence too, and Arnaldo had an extensive criminal record including violent charges and substance offences. But by now he was on the run. He'd already fled to Mexico and police believed that his brother had helped him. But they really just couldn't track him down and he remained a fugitive for 13 years. But it wasn't until his brother got in trouble with police for something kind of unrelated to this case that they searched his property and found Arnaldo's car. This car was hidden at the house and it's reportedly absolutely littered with forensic evidence. It's reported that there's loads of forensics linking Arnaldo to his wife's murder. He was finally apprehended and is being held in Mexican jail until his trial.
However, coined the phrase, "You can't make this stuff up," might have known the story of real-life boogeyman, Albert Fish. A slight, elderly man with grey hair, no one suspected the kindly single father of being sadistic child murderer and cannibal.
Gruesome torture methods that you'll be glad you weren't around for. Part 1. The brazen bull execution was a method used in ancient Greece where a flame at the bottom roasted you to death and the head of the bull was designed in such a way that your screams would be filtered and contorted into the sounds of a real bull. On pirate ships, workers who refused to follow orders would be hung by their nails. Another method used by pirates was called keel hauling, in which the men were dragged under the ship until they died. And if this wasn't bad enough, the ship's hull was covered in barnacles so the man would be cut up as he drowned. Scaphism was an ancient Persian torture technique where criminals were stripped naked, tied to a boat, and then force-fed honey and milk until they got diarrhea, were covered in more honey and set adrift in the ocean. This would then attract insects that would slowly but surely eat the men to death.
This is Michael Myers. He's one of America's most violent serial killers. This is Judith Myers, Michael's sister, whom Michael killed when he was just 6 years old on Halloween night of 1963. After the murder, he was sent here for 15 years. This is Smith's Grove Sanitarium. However, he managed to escape in 1978. The first place he went to after escaping was Haddonfield in Illinois, his hometown. This is Laurie Strode, one of the people who Michael Myers was stalking. He ended up killing a few of her friends on Halloween night, 1978. Dr. Loomis here tried to capture Michael, but he ended up escaping after his killing spree in 1978. He got sent back to Smith's Grove where he remained for 40 years until he escaped again in 2018. Another killing spree soon followed. 10 years after the explosion at Haddonfield Memorial Hospital in 1978, American serial killer Michael Myers was transferred to Smith's Grove Sanitarium. He was moved from Ridgemont Federal Sanitarium, where he'd been in a comatose state ever since the explosion. On October 30th, 1988, the night of the transfer, Myers woke up suddenly in the ambulance after hearing he had a niece named Jamie Lloyd. This is his sister Laurie Strode's daughter. Myers killed the ambulance personnel, escaped, and made his way once more to Haddonfield. Dr. Sam Loomis was again in pursuit of Myers after learning about his escape. Myers then went on another one of his infamous killing sprees whilst in pursuit of Jamie. Rachel Carruthers, the daughter of Jamie's foster family, managed to ram Myers with a truck, which sent him flying into a ditch next to an abandoned mine. Not one to stay down, Myers soon rose to his feet. A huge crowd then gathered and proceeded to shoot Myers until he fell into the mine. Jamie then stabbed and killed her foster mother Darlene with a pair of scissors. This was eerily similar to how Myers killed his own sister when he was 6. Comment for part 4. American serial killer Michael Myers was shot by Dr. Sam Loomis on October 31st, 1978. Despite then falling off a balcony, Myers managed to survive and ran away, though he did manage to kill another teenage girl during his escape. Laurie Strode, who luckily escaped Myers' wrath, was taken to Haddonfield Memorial Hospital. Myers, having seen a news report giving away Laurie's location, decided to pay her a visit. He first cut the hospital's phone lines before killing the security guard, a doctor, and several nurses. Meanwhile, Dr. Loomis discovered clues connecting Michael Myers to the occult, which he thinks explains his apparent indestructibility. Laurie then found out she is Myers' younger sister. She was put up for adoption after the death of his parents.
A cat and mouse chase between Myers and Laurie ended with Michael again being shot by Dr. Loomis. Failing to die once more, Myers was then shot in both eyes by Laurie. He was then set on fire. Was that the end of Michael Myers?
This 800-year-old book contains one of the most cursed images on the planet. So I already know that some of you are going to say this guy looks like he's straight out of South Park. But some historians say that this is the most accurate portrait of the devil ever drawn. I'm going to tell you more about it, but if you want the full deep dive and a couple other scary stories, check out this week's episode. This is the book. It's known as the Devil's Bible, and it's the largest surviving book from the Middle Ages. For reference, it's 3 feet long and 165 pounds. Historians can tell it was written by one person, and they think it would have taken 20 years to write, but the legend says that it was written in one night. The story goes that back in the 1200s, there was a monk that was sentenced to death. He was going to be walled alive, which is where you stand in place and they build this little coffin around you, and then you just wait to die. But the monk pleaded with the judge and said, if you let me live, I will write the entirety of human knowledge into one book, and I'll do it in one night. The judge agreed, but a few hours after the monk started writing, he realized he wasn't going to be able to finish that night. He ended up making a pact with the devil so that he could finish the book in one evening. And in return, he drew an accurate portrait of the devil he saw inside of the book. It's also believed that anyone who's ever owned the book has also been cursed, which I get into in the episode, so check it out.
When I think of theme park rides likely to kill someone, I don't think about the miniature railway. Unfortunately, that's exactly what happened at Gulliver's Land in Milton Keynes. Hugh Doe was 56 and from Newport Pagnell in Bucks. He was an engineer and he was working at Gulliver's Land on May the 10th, 2006. He had been doing some maintenance on the miniature railway train at the theme park, and after the work was completed, it's reported that he stood up after giving the driver the all clear to move the train on. Tragically, he was killed instantly when the train went into a tunnel. Hideously, it's reported that he suffered a huge amount of trauma to his skull and brain before being dragged through the 10-foot-long tunnel. When a health and safety spokeswoman was asked for comment, she stated that he had been decapitated. She stated, there was probably 2.5 to 3 inches between the top of the carriage and the tunnel. The park was closed to members of the public the day after the incident as a mark of respect for the victim. There was an inquest into Hugh Doe's death. Eventually it was announced that Hugh's death was labelled as misadventure. In 1988, the mystery of a woman found dead in a bin plagued Georgia. We now finally have answers in this unsettling case. It was Valentine's Day 1988 and police received a report. A victim had been found deceased. She was wrapped in plastic and duct tape in a large nylon suitcase that had been placed in a bin. It was believed that the female had been reportedly dead for around 4 to 7 days, and the cause of death was asphyxiation. However, no one knew who this woman was. Fingerprints and dental records were compared to other missing people in the country, but there was no matches. A forensic artist drew a sketch of the victim's possible appearance, which was released to the public, but the mystery remained. Now we finally know her identity. The mystery victim was 26-year-old Chong-Un Kim of Hinesville. New genealogical technology finally led to her identification. In 1981, she had moved to Korea to the US. She has a sister who currently lives in New York. Now there is still the mystery of who on earth killed this woman and why. Police state that they will work relentlessly to bring justice and closure to her family.
Nobody knows what happened to these girls, and this is the last photo ever taken of them. 2 young girls pose for a selfie in front of the wild nature of Panama. The 2 girls are Chris Kremers and Lisanne Froon, Dutch travelers who were hiking a trail in Panama. They set off for their hike on April 1st at 11 a.m. Unfortunately, on April 2nd, they did not turn up for an appointment, and the parents of the girls stopped receiving the daily text they had been getting in the past. On April 6th, the parents arrived in Panama along with a full police search. The forest would be completely searched and combed for 10 days, but nothing was found. 10 weeks later, a woman handed in a blue backpack. The backpack belonged to Lisanne, and inside were personal belongings including a camera and their phones. The phones had evidence of emergency numbers having been dialed only hours after the girls started their hike. But due to the lack of reception, the calls did not connect. Lisanne's phone died on April 4th. And Chris's phone would be turned on randomly between the 5th and the 11th of April. But the incorrect pin was entered or no pin was entered each time. On the camera, 90 flash photos were taken between 1 and 4 a.m. in the complete darkness of the jungle. One disturbing image shows the back of Chris's head with blood on her hair. 2 months after the backpack was discovered, a pelvis and a foot inside a boot were discovered, along with other remains. These were later DNA tested and confirmed to belong to Chris Kremers and Lisanne Fern. What happened to them still remains a mystery to this day. Just imagine being in the middle of the jungle at night and you don't know what's happening. Your life is in danger and you have no service. I could only imagine the fear and anxiety these two girls were feeling in this moment. May Chris Kremers and Lisanne Fern rest in peace. This is the Ronnie McNutt case, one of the most disturbing and sad cases explained. Ronnie McNutt was a former U.S. Army Reserve soldier and had also served in the Iraq Wars. After that, he started to work in Toyota, and during COVID, he lost his job. He was dealing with PTSD, depression, and was also going through a breakup with his girlfriend. And on August 31st, 2020, McNutt began a live stream on Facebook. His best friend Joshua Steen noticed the live stream. He did not find it unusual at first, since Ronnie always did live streams, but he became extremely alarmed when he realized Ronnie was intoxicated and was also holding a single-shot rifle. Joshua tried to intervene multiple times, particularly when Ronnie misfired the rifle, hoping that Facebook would cut the stream and end the video feed, preventing people from seeing into Ronnie's house. But Facebook refused to cut the stream, and as the stream went on, Ronnie's phone rang frequently, and the last call he received was from his ex-girlfriend, which he answered, leading to a brief argument between the two. And after she ended the call, Ronnie grabbed the gun and addressed the audience for the last time, saying, "Hey guys, I guess that's it." He then aimed the rifle and fired. A final message by Ronnie McNutt was later discovered on Facebook saying, "Someone in your life needs to hear that they matter, that they are loved, that they have a future. Be the one to tell them." This case is just extremely sad, and ever since I heard about it back in 2020, it's always stuck with me. And what makes this worse is that this whole ordeal was live streamed on Facebook. And the entire time, Facebook just let this man stream and do this. Rest in peace to Ronnie McNutt, and if you're going through anything, please reach out to somebody and talk to them.
I killed my daughter's murderer in the courtroom. My name is Marianne Bachmeier, and I'm going to tell you all about my terrible revenge. It all began on May 5th, 1980. When my 7-year-old daughter Anna decided to run away from home after an argument. But on that day, Klaus Grabowski, a 35-year-old butcher of Polish origin, kidnapped her. Grabowski held Anna for several hours in his home, assaulting her before strangling her with a pair of pantyhose, placing her tiny body in a box, and leaving her by a canal. Klaus Grabowski was a recidivist sex offender who had already been convicted of sexually abusing 2 minors. Once arrested, Grabowski declared that he had not intended to abuse Anna, claiming that she had tried to seduce him, and that his fear of returning to prison had prompted him to kill her. On March 6, 1981, the 3rd day of this monster's trial, I managed to smuggle a Beretta 70 pistol into the courtroom. I pointed the gun at Grabowski and pulled the trigger 8 times. 7 of the shots hit Grabowski, who was killed almost instantly. I'm convicted of manslaughter and illegal possession of firearms, sentenced to 6 years in prison, but released after 3 years for good behavior. On September 17th, 1996, at the age of 46, I died of pancreatic cancer in a hospital in Lübeck. My story is that of a mother ready to do anything to avenge the horrible death of her daughter. What do you think of my actions? Give me your opinion in comments, and rest in peace, Anna.
A mysterious book appeared on my doorstep the day after Halloween. Upon opening it, a curse affected my entire family. If you are watching this video on November 1st, 2023, just after Halloween, drop your age in the comments if you don't want this mysterious book to end up in front of your door and haunt you forever. My name is Charlie, and my terrible story began the day after Halloween. As dusk enveloped the world still imbued with the eerie atmosphere of the previous night, I discovered an old dusty book, adorned with a lock, placed right in front of my door. Intrigued and with trembling hands, I picked it up, The cover was engraved with mysterious symbols, and the pages overflowed with supernatural tales. And then, the phenomenal occurred. The stories came to life. Shadows began to dance around my room, whispers filled the air, and I felt a presence, as if something or someone was watching me. I tried to close the book, but it seemed to have its own will. The stories became darker, the whispers louder. And suddenly I saw a figure, standing in a corner of my room, barely visible. My heart raced, and I realized I had to act quickly. I grabbed the book and rushed outside, throwing it as far as I could. But the moment it hit the ground, the figure disappeared, and the whispers ceased. I found myself standing there, in the darkness, wondering if all of this had really happened. But here's the problem. The book disappeared, but the presence, it's still there. I feel it, lurking in the shadows, on the lookout. So, if you have experienced something similar, share it in the comments. Stay tuned, because this story is far from over. Something tells me that this book will find a way to come back to me, and when it does, I will be ready.
What monster plans the murder of their child on Halloween? This disturbed man named Ronald Clark O'Brien. On Halloween in 1974 in Deer Park, Texas, Ronald took his 8-year-old son's life by giving him this candy that was filled with cyanide. From the outside in, Ronald seemed to have a pretty good life. He was married and had 2 kids, Timothy, who was 8 years old, and his daughter Elizabeth. He had a great job as an eye doctor, but Ronald was $94,000 in debt and he needed a way out. On this night, Ronald took his 2 kids to go trick-or-treating, and along came his neighbor with his kids as well. The routine that night was that Ronald would walk to the front doorstep with the kids to collect the candy while his neighbor stayed behind. In one of those house visits, Ronald managed to slip a few pixie sticks filled with cyanide in the kids' candy bag and made it seem like one of the houses gave it to them. When the kids got home, Timothy asked his father to open some candy, and Ronald purposely opened a pixie stick and gave it to Timothy and watched him eat it. Within just 1 hour, Timothy became extremely sick and passed away in the ambulance. Medical records quickly revealed that Timothy was poisoned with cyanide. Once they discovered that the cyanide was inside this specific candy, Ronald claimed that he got it from a house that they visited on that night. But after investigating, they discovered that no one was even in that house on that night, so Ronald was lying. The investigation turned towards Ronald, and they discovered that he was asking around where he could find cyanide. But he became even more suspicious when they found out that he was in so much debt and that he took out a $20,000 life insurance policy on both his kids. And he took out this policy a month before Timothy passed away. And it gets worse. Ronald also called the life insurance company the morning after Timothy passed away to collect the money. He was charged with 1 count of murder and 4 counts of attempted murder and was sentenced to death. Ronald was executed in 1984, but he kept his innocence until the day he died.
This couple and their vehicle vanished into thin air. This is the disturbing story of Richard Petroni Jr. and Danielle Imbo. So Danielle and Richard were married, but they were separated at the time that they went missing. But people who knew them said that they were an on and off again type couple where they would get together, break back up, and so forth. And on February 19th, 2005, the couple joined another couple for drinks at a place called Abilene's on South Street in the city of Philadelphia. Now, if you've ever been to South Street in Philadelphia, it is a very, very busy place pretty much at all times of the night. I actually got tattooed on this street right here. And there's so many restaurants, bars, businesses there that there are always people around. So if something strange would have happened to this couple here, it definitely would have been seen by somebody. But on that evening, they left the bar that they were at around 11:45 p.m., and witnesses last saw them while they were walking to their truck. The car that they were in was a 2001 Dodge pickup truck. And like I said before, this was the last time the car and the couple would ever be seen. So after Danielle and Richard were seen leaving that bar on South Street, their cell phone records showed no more further activity, and their personal finances also showed no activity. Media accounts have also stated that Danielle and Richard were very, very close to their children and their families, and they would have no reason to disappear. Now, the authorities have tried looking at this from every possible angle. They've investigated this as a possible murder for hire. They've searched all the local rivers and tributaries. And they've even looked into the theory that these two may have wanted to disappear themselves, but no evidence has ever been found as to where both of these people went. The group Exploring with Purpose, whose entire goal is to locate missing persons, actually took on this case in 2022 and used all of their equipment to even search more local rivers and places where this couple could have maybe driven off a bridge or into the water, and they still found nothing. And this is a case that I don't think we'll ever see any true resolution in, and it haunts me. I mean, what the hell happened?
What? Look in there, mate. Look in there. What? Look in there.
Do you remember Brooke Houts, the YouTuber who made her YouTube channel about her dog and how much she loved her dog, and then accidentally uploaded footage of her abusing her dog to YouTube? Well, if you don't, let's go back in time because I remember this happening and this was disturbing. So, to the world, Brooke wanted to seem like a dog mama. She wanted people online to believe that she loved her dog Sphinx, that she would do anything for her dog, and more than anything, she wanted views and clicks. She wanted to be a successful YouTuber. She posted these vlogs all the time about her hanging out with her dog in her house, taking the dog on walks. And from the outside looking in, it really did look like she loved her dog. And then came the accident. So on August 6, 2019, Brooke uploaded a video to her channel which was a normal video up until the very end. So it's still unknown if Brooke was actually the person who accidentally included these clips in the video or if her editor put them in out of spite, but at the end of this video, it randomly jarringly cuts to footage of Brooke abusing her dog Sphinx. Sphinx jumps into the frame and Brooke smacks him on the head. She also is seen screaming at the dog, "Stop!" and she spits on the dog and pushes him to the ground. It's a very, very almost Black Mirror-ish type video where it's this person who the entire video you've seen seemingly cares about their dog, and then it cuts to these clips of them brutally attacking their dog. It's just a really, really off-putting and disturbing video. So after this, obviously, there were massive cries of outrage from the entire YouTube community and really the world. I mean, this person was claiming that they loved their dog so much and would do anything for them, but posted footage of them abusing them. Brooke quickly took down the video, quickly took down a lot of her content. She went private on a lot of her accounts. Organizations like PETA came out and publicly roasted her. And the Los Angeles Police Department opened up an investigation into charges of animal cruelty against Brooke. Now, while she was never charged with any crime and the case kind of faded into obscurity, I really hope that Sphinx is in a great home right now, and I hope that she learned her lesson about how you should treat your animals.
This is the most disturbing Brazil cartel execution video explained. The video that I'm about to explain is 6 minutes long and it might be the most brutal video ever. The video opens up with a brief interrogation of one of the women. In the interrogation, she pledges her allegiance to the cartel, and the video then jump cuts and shows the same woman who at this point is bloody and beaten bad. She begins begging for her life, saying, "You could do whatever you want, just not that," referring to the man pointing the gun at her head. One of the other men then says no more chances, and the man with the gun shoots the poor woman in the head. They then check on her body, and the one man says, "I don't think she's dead," which makes him take out a machete and begin hacking away at her neck. The video then jump cuts again, this time showing the second victim, and this is where the video gets extremely graphic. The men order her to place her hands on a fallen log, which she does, and is then struck in the hand by the machete. They then order her to place her hands back on the log, and they then repeat this process over and over, until the log is completely covered in bloody handprints. She then holds her bloody and mangled hands up to the camera as she tries to hold back tears. The video then jump cuts again, and it shows the same girl sitting in a muddy hole, and the man carrying the machete then takes her hand and strikes her arm numerous times with the machete. He first breaks her bone and then cuts through the flesh, severing her arm. And due to the machete being blunt, it takes several strikes. Surprisingly, the victim doesn't scream, but she rolls around in pain for a few seconds. She then pleads to the killers to leave her alone. The man with the machete then orders her to raise her leg, which she does, and he then hits her in the shin twice, which looks like it breaks the bone. She cries out mercy and says she's about to pass out. The man then orders her to lift her leg again so he could repeat the process. He then says this again, but the victim then says she can't move. And in response, the man with the machete strikes her all over her body, all while she's still pleading with the man. And after several more hits, she says it's good enough, insinuating to kill her and put her out of her misery. After a couple more strikes, the killer breaks the machete and the video then jump cuts again and shows the second victim lying on her stomach with the killer pulling her hair to raise her head up. The killer then strikes her in the throat several times with the machete, and instinctively she tries to block the blade with her one remaining hand. The killer continues to hack and slash at the victim's neck as she slips in and out of consciousness before he finally beheads her. A third victim is shot in the head and beheaded off camera, much like the first victim. The killer then takes all 3 heads by the hair and holds them up to the camera, and the video then concludes. This video is extremely graphic and terrifying, and whatever you do, please never go seeking this video, because it will definitely scar you for weeks or even forever. This world is completely brutal, and this video is just another example.
Some are calling this the most horrific fraternity hazing ever in the United States. This is how one night at university can destroy your life forever. Danny Santulli was 18 years old and a freshman at the Uni of Missouri. In October 2021, Danny was captured on CCTV being blindfolded and led downstairs in an event named Pledge Dad Reveal Night. Danny was made to drink a litre of straight vodka by himself. At around 10:55, Danny collapsed and some of the frat members were seen carrying him to a sofa. Around midnight, Danny was captured on cameras sliding off the sofa, and shortly after he was found unconscious with blue lips. Shockingly, instead of calling an ambulance for Danny, the frat members piled him into a car, dropping him on the way. They drove him to hospital, but at this point he was already in cardiac arrest. Danny had to be resuscitated and spent the next 6 weeks in intensive care. Prior to this evening, Danny had been left needing stitches and crutches after he'd been forced to climb inside of a bin with broken glass inside. 2 nights before the night in question, Danny broke down in tears on the phone to his sister and told her about how stressed he felt about it all. His family had begged him to quit the pledge, but he didn't want to be ridiculed. This is Danny now. He will need full-time care for the rest of his life. He's now severely brain damaged, is blind, and cannot walk or talk. 2 former students are set to go to trial over this case. You will not believe this insane plot twist. In 2008, Carolyn Watson and Julian Butchwald were a young religious couple. They were living in Melbourne, Australia, and had been together around 2 years. Julian was driving the pair to a picnic date in the car, but he actually stopped the car suddenly, noticing an animal on the side of the road. Suddenly, something horrific happened. Carolyn's vision went completely black after being blindfolded by a terrifying masked man. All she could work out was she was being stripped off and thrown into a vehicle. The car finally stopped and she took her blindfold off, and she was really relieved to see that her boyfriend was by her side. He'd also been stripped off and the couple were completely in the middle of nowhere. The pair managed to untie themselves, but were having to just wander around aimlessly for a week, trying to find safety. Meanwhile, police were desperately searching for the couple. Family and friends were really concerned, and they knew how out of character this was for the pair to go missing. They sent out air and water search teams, but just couldn't locate the couple. As the missing pair were very religious, they'd actually vowed to be celibate until marriage, but Julian started to suggest that it might be a good idea to break this celibacy in order to keep them warm. Finally, a local farmer found the couple and alerted police. However, they quickly found that the story didn't really add up. Julian soon confessed to police that he'd actually made the whole thing up and he'd staged the kidnapping. His motive was purely to try and get his girlfriend to break their vow of celibacy. This is the UK's most famous missing boy. In September 2007, Andrew Gosden was just 14 years old. He was a very intelligent boy and was top of his class in most classes at school. He was an introvert that usually spent most of his time at home. The day before Andrew went missing seemed completely normal. He went to school, he had some tea, and then he watched some TV. However, on September the 14th, he seemed more irritable than normal. Instead of getting the bus to school that morning like his parents thought he was, he went to a cash point and withdrew £200. CCTV then captures him walking home, where he changed his clothes into a Slipknot t-shirt. When he left the house, he didn't take his charger with him, and he also didn't take £100 that he'd saved up. He didn't take his passport, but he did take his house key, which indicates he was going to come home. He bought a one-way ticket to London and was last seen leaving King's Cross station at about 11:30. Frustratingly, the school had actually tried to contact Andrew's parents to say that he hadn't turned up to school that day, but they dialed the wrong number and left an answer phone message on the wrong phone. His family was completely cleared of any suspicion, and the family and the school and all of the students went to London and they were handing out loads of flyers. Weirdly, a year after this incident, a man came to a police station to say that he had information about Andrew. Now, the police station was unmanned, so the person spoke to this man just over an intercom system and sent a police officer down there. Mysteriously, by the time the police officer arrived, the person had vanished. This is what Andrew might look like now, just being the age that he may be if he's still alive. Theories about this case is that he may have gone to London to meet up with someone or go to a concert. Was he lured there by somebody with bad intentions, or was he just going there for the day, gonna come back, and was at the wrong place at the wrong time and somebody did something bad to him? In 2009, the family paid for a search of the River Thames to try and find some sort of closure. The search did find a body, but it wasn't Andrew's. The most up-to-date information that we have on this case is that 2 men were arrested on suspicion of kidnapping Andrew, but they've actually been released.